guys, Tez here and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be answering a lot of your questions. So usually when I get questions I do answer them straight away, but I just thought I'll bring together some of the questions that I get asked a few times just so we can help other people out who might have the same questions but not feel able to ask me, even though I don't know why you didn't be able to ask me because I'm your friendly pharmacist. But before we get started, don't forget to grab your cup of tea to have with Tez and let's jump right in. A question I get asked a lot is, would I go back into hospital pharmacy? Now, it's not that I wouldn't or that I would. At the moment in time, I've not seen an opportunity that I want to explore, and I am happy with where I am, regardless of my last video. So at this moment in time, I don't think I would go back into secondary care, but that's not to say if the right opportunity came, I wouldn't go for it. I suppose it really depends, you know, because you never know what could happen. I might change my mind about certain things, but yeah, at the moment, no. So a question I get asked a lot is, what do I prefer the most, whether it's hospital, GP or community pharmacy? And I suppose it depends. I have mentioned the differences in both, and I think I have a video if you want to check that out. So they are good in certain regards and some of them not so good in certain regards, but at this moment in time my preference is GP land, just because it works well in terms of flexibility. Like I mentioned, I do 4 long days and that gives me 3 days where I can do other things and explore other hobbies, and it just makes me feel like I have a bit of a longer break, so I can use Friday for chores or any other bits and bobs that I need to do, cleaning the house, laundry, and it means I still have Saturday and Sunday to rest, meet up with friends, and I just think that works out better for me because I feel like the week's pretty much ruined anyway if you're going to work Monday to Friday, because in the morning you're getting ready to go to work and after work you're sometimes too tired to do other things. Now I know there are scope for flexibility like in hospital or community, but usually you need to have a reason, like a baby or maybe a family member that you need to take care of, which is not the case in my situation. So at the moment I prefer GP land. Am I enjoying my new role as a PCN pharmacist? I've been a PCN pharmacist for more than a year now, so I guess I am still fairly new at it, but I am also a little bit more seasoned than I was before I started. I do enjoy it. I do think there's a lot more scope for patient interaction, so I'm speaking to patients all day every day. Like usually towards 6 o'clock my voice is really raspy and it's hurting a bit from talking all day, so I do think there's a lot of talking involved, which I do like to go on a bit. So it does help that way. I do enjoy it in that sense, and when you go the extra mile, like sometimes it can be really easy to see the fruit of your labour, because for example if you help a patient out in an acute situation and then you can always follow them on within a month, like if it's antidepressants, start them on something and then you can speak to them again in a month, see how they're getting on, see how that medication has changed their life in a way. So I guess it is good that way because you get to see what happens, whereas when I worked in hospital you would discharge someone but then you might not necessarily see what happens next, which could be a good thing because they're not sick enough to come back into hospital. So yeah, I do like it in that way. The next question was, do I prefer it to my old role? At this moment in time I do, because like I mentioned, flexibility gives me the time to do a lot of other things. I do like talking to people a lot, so it's good for that. It is a pay rise from when I was in hospital, which I guess it was natural because it was the next step up in the banding process. So I guess that's not really a preference, but it is good that it is more money than what I was on before. I like that it's close to home, so I'm not spending a lot of money on fuel, which is always a good thing. So yeah, I am enjoying it, and I guess at this moment in time I do prefer it to my old role. The next question is, what is the hardest part of working in a PCN? I have mentioned this before, but I think the main thing can be loneliness. So when I say loneliness, I mean even though there are other pharmacists who work as part of the PCN, we all have our own clinics. Not everyone's going to be free out all the time to help you or be a sounding board. So you do find that a lot of the times you have to try figure things out by yourself a lot more before you ask for help, because you don't want to be a bother, or when you do ask for help you don't always get it straight away because somebody has to be free to respond. And because different people in the PCN work at different sites, it means that when it's lunchtime you don't have people to talk to. which I suppose like it's not really a negative for me because I'm quite introverted and I like to use my lunch to sort of de-stress and not talk about work. So I'll eat my food and I'll watch my show, but usually I do that in my consultation room. So I guess you do spend a lot of the time in a room by yourself without talking to other staff members, so that can be quite lonely, and you don't really get to, I suppose, have as many face-to-face meetings. Like when I worked in hospital, we would have like a, what was it called? A huddle. We would have a huddle in the morning, and then you would know what was going on for the day, where other people were, and you probably see someone at lunch. So whilst I do like being by myself, there are other times when maybe if I've had a rough morning or I just need someone to talk to, because my lunch is at 1:30, which doesn't match anyone else's time anyway, and even if it did, we're at different sites, so we wouldn't necessarily be able to talk. It does mean that there is an element of loneliness. Oh, and I suppose in hospital there's a lot more guidance in what you can and can't do, and it's not based on what you think you are able to do, whereas in GP land, there's a lot more autonomy, I guess. Like you have to think, am I comfortable doing this or am I not, especially me as a non-prescriber. There's a lot of things that sometimes I'll be like, I should really do this because I'm not a prescriber, but I feel like I can, but can I? Whereas in hospital it's very clear cut, like you can do this, you cannot do this. So I guess if you like guidelines and rules, you might struggle, because I've worked at 2 different PCNs and they do things completely differently, like I mentioned before. So the structure isn't always the same, so it can be quite difficult in that sense as well. Another question was whether people can start as a band 6 in GP land, and I don't think it's very common. So when I say band 6, I mean the NHS banding, which even if you work for a private GP, they still loosely follow the NHS banding scales, and usually they don't hire band 6 pharmacists because, like I said, there's not a lot of supervision and you're fresh out of pre-reg, so you might just need a little bit more support. So usually pharmacists start at band 7, but that's not to say if it is a particularly good PCN where they have a lot of staff, or if you've done part of your pre-reg training there wouldn't be an opportunity. But usually it starts from band 7 and above, because they do expect you to have a little bit more training and be able to work a little bit more by yourself, whereas day 1 of being a pharmacist, you don't really want to be working in GP land by yourself. I mean, I certainly wouldn't. I wouldn't feel comfortable, so I guess that's probably why. How does career progression look like in your new role? I suppose in terms of career progression, there isn't really that much. It's a little bit like community pharmacy in the sense that at the moment I'm a clinical pharmacist. Once I'm more experienced and I've been working for it a lot longer and I've finished CPP, prescribing, yada yada yada, then there is scope for me to be a senior clinical pharmacist, where I would then take on more of a leadership role and be involved in the training of pre-reg students as a trainee pharmacist. Sorry, I know they're not pre-regs anymore. Trainee pharmacists and more clinical pharmacists. But unless you I suppose move around, if there's already a senior at your place, chances are they're not anywhere near retiring, so they're going to be there for a while. So unless they move, then you probably won't get promoted. And I suppose after that, the next step would be the lead clinical pharmacist. But it's quite similar in hospital in that you do your trainee pharmacist, then you're a foundation pharmacist, then you're a specialist pharmacist, then you're a senior pharmacist, then I suppose you could be a lead pharmacist, and then unless you take on additional things or sidestep to expand your role, there's not really that much in terms of progression and in a linear sort of sense. The next question was, how long does it take to become a band 8 in hospital pharmacy compared to GP pharmacy? There's no written rule really. I suppose it depends with when you apply, where you apply, and what skills you have when you apply. So for example, if you did you're prescribing and you've done some sort of diploma, and then a job comes up in the area that you're already working in. You might get a secondment to be an 8. This is hospital, by the way. And some people usually they become band 8s after 3 to 4 years usually, but that's not a written rule. In GP land, it's similar in that once you've done the CPP course, which is 18 months, and then you've also done prescribing, then there is that discussion about having a pay rise or a pay review or a role review, where then you become an official 8. You might find that your friend who lives in Birmingham is an 8 and you live in Leeds and you're a 7, but you're exactly the same skill wise. What are the prerequisites to becoming a GP independent prescriber? I'm guessing they mean like a non-medical prescriber as a pharmacist in a GP practice. And there are no prerequisites as such. You just have to do the prescribing course, which is 6 months. How you get onto that course though, that's where the fun starts. So unless you worked in a different sector before, so if you did hospital and then you already had prescribing from then, I think as long as you're comfortable, you can pretty much use your prescribing straight away when you move to GP land. Or if you do it as part of the CPP course, then once you're comfortable and you're on the register and you have your PIN and everything, you can start using it. To get into GP land, do you have to do any other extra qualifications? I'm a pre-reg and I kind of want to go into it after. Unless you've done GP as part of your pre-registration training, I personally wouldn't recommend it. And obviously this is from my personal experience. If you feel like you can and you do it and it's great, then I'm happy for you, more power. But I don't think it's a right step, just because it's very different to anything we learn in uni or any of the placements you go to. It can be quite overwhelming. It's very lonely. You will probably have a lot of questions and you might not always get the right answer or at the correct time that you need it. Might take you longer to do things, which might make the rest of the team feel a little bit frustrated with you, and it might make you feel a little bit more frustrated because you feel like you're incompetent. So in terms of the training, so like I mentioned before, I'm doing the CPP course, and I guess that's it really. At my PCN we do have a pre-registration pharmacist. She started from last year, July, August, but she does like 2 days there, 3 days in community and vice versa. But she's been there the whole year, so she probably has a lot more experience than, for example, a pharmacist coming from community or a pharmacist coming from hospital in terms of GP land. So she would be fine, I would say, because she pretty much knows what she's meant to do. There's only a few things that she doesn't know, whereas I think a fresh pre-reg, day 1 of being on the register working in a GP land type situation, I think it would be quite hard, so I wouldn't recommend it. There were a few other questions about interview prep, pros and cons, and I've done videos on those, so if you want to know the answers, that just look through my history and you'll be able to find them. And the last question, which everyone asks me all the time, is do I regret leaving hospital pharmacy? And the answer is no. Absolutely not. I do not regret leaving hospital pharmacy. I don't tend to regret a lot of the decisions I make. I obviously do sometimes, but usually I think you make the best decision that you can at that time with the information that you have around. So if you make a decision and then later you find out, oh, maybe if this had happened, I could have done this, but you didn't have that information then, so you can't say, oh, what if. So I just tend to say, okay, this is the information I have at this moment, and for me, I think this is the most logical decision I could make, and then I make it. And then if I find out more information, then you can always change your decision. You know, I just think life is too short to be regretting stuff, you know. You have plenty of time to make other mistakes in your future that I wouldn't be worried about what mistakes I've already made in the past. So yeah, I don't regret leaving hospital pharmacy. But anyway guys, that is the end of the video. Let me know in the comments if you have any more questions, or you can always Insta me. I know lots of you people do. And don't forget to tap the like button so the video reaches more people. Subscribe if you haven't already, because it really helps me out. And until next time, bye for now.